When the postman's green bicycle jingled at the mouth of the alley, I was crouched in front of the coal stove fanning the fire. The flames licked the bottom of the aluminum pot, and the millet porridge I had prepared for my mother-in-law simmered with a soft hiss. Hearing someone call out, I hurriedly wiped the soot from my hands, my heart pounding as I rushed outside. "Family of Michael Lin, transfer order." The postman handed me a thick brown envelope. The bright red emblem printed on it made my fingertips tingle. It was a 3-year transfer order. Michael served as a military doctor in a border unit. When we got married, he had told me that once he earned his official title, he would apply to bring me with him so I could finally escape this cramped old neighborhood and live a stable life in the military family housing. Clutching the envelope, my eyes fell on the line approving the soldier's spouse to accompany him. My tears almost fell. That evening, when Michael came home, his olive green uniform was still dusty from travel. I set down the hot meal I had prepared and handed him the transfer order, unable to hide the excitement trembling in my voice. "Michael, your transfer order is here. When are we leaving? I'll start packing right away. Do you want me to bring the pickled radishes you like?" He took 2 quick bites of rice without even lifting his head. "Pack what? You're not going. Not yet." The smile on my face froze in place. "Why not? The order clearly says the spouse is approved to go. I'm taking my sister-in-law." Michael set down his chopsticks, speaking as calmly as if he were commenting on the weather. "My mom called and said Grace hasn't been well. She keeps coughing back home. The climate near the base is better, and the medical care is convenient. I'll take her there so she can recuperate." For a moment, I thought I misheard him. Grace Wang, my late brother-in-law's widow. After Michael's older brother died during flood relief efforts, she had been living with my in-laws. She was frail, but not to the extent of needing military housing to recuperate. "What about me?" I said. "The transfer order is for family members, and I'm your wife. The family housing only has 1 room. It can't fit 3 people." Michael frowned slightly, as if annoyed by my lack of understanding. "You just wait here. Once I settle everything over there, I'll let you know." "How long do I have to wait?" My voice trembled. He hesitated. "Hard to say. Depends on the situation." I stared at the man I had loved for 5 years and waited for 3. There wasn't even a trace of guilt in his eyes, only quiet entitlement. Suddenly, I remembered the neighbors' gossip from earlier. They said that whenever Michael returned to his hometown, he always bought milk powder and fruit candies for Grace, saying he pitied her. I had even argued with them to defend his reputation. But now, my fists tightened, my nails digging into my palms. "The transfer slot is meant for the soldier's wife, not your sister-in-law. She has my in-laws to care for her, and the village doctor. Why should she take my spot?" "Why are you being so unreasonable?" Michael snapped, raising his voice. "Grace was my brother's wife. My brother gave his life for this country. Isn't it right for me to look after her? She's weak. If something happens to her back home, how am I supposed to face my brother's spirit in heaven? And what about me?" My voice broke with tears. "I'm your legally wedded wife. I waited 3 years hoping we could finally be together. Is this how you treat me? If 1 room isn't enough, you can apply for temporary housing, or I can stay in the guest quarters first. Why do you have to take Grace instead of me?" "Guest quarters aren't easy to apply for," he said coldly, "and they cost money." Michael said he still couldn't take care of Grace properly yet. He stood up, straightened the hem of his uniform, and said firmly, "This is decided. I've already reported it to my superior. I said I'm bringing a family member." He didn't ask which family member. His words felt like an ice pick stabbing straight into my chest. So he had planned all of this from the very beginning. From start to finish, he never intended to take me. The family member he spoke of was never me at all. "Michael, do you have feelings for Grace?" I glared at him. That question had been rolling in my throat for a long time before I finally forced it out. His expression darkened instantly. He lifted his hand as if he wanted to hit me, then held back at the last second. Instead, he snapped viciously. "What nonsense are you spouting? Do you think I'm that kind of man? If you keep making trouble like this, don't expect this marriage to go on peacefully." Then he turned and stormed out, the door slamming so loudly the dishes on the table shook. I collapsed into the chair, staring at the meal he had barely touched. My tears finally burst free. The transfer order lay on the table, its bright red lettering looking even harsher under the light. I remembered how, when we married, he swore in front of the portrait of our great leader that he would treat me well for the rest of my life, that he would give me a good home. But now, he wanted to take another woman, a woman who wasn't even his wife, into the military family housing that should have been mine, leaving me alone in this old alley without even a proper explanation. Late into the night, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dim streetlight outside the window, my heart cold to the core. I knew that maybe this marriage had been a mistake from the very beginning, but I couldn't simply surrender. I couldn't let them get what they wanted so easily. Michael could abandon me. He could give away what should have been mine, but I couldn't abandon myself. I wiped my tears, shoved the transfer order to the deepest corner of the drawer. If he wouldn't give me a stable life, then I would earn it myself. With the news about the reinstatement of college entrance exams spreading everywhere, maybe this was my only lifeline. In the middle of the night, just as the door hinge creaked softly, I was leaning over my desk, flipping through old textbooks. Under the glow of the kerosene lamp, Michael's shadow stretched long behind him. He was packing a change of clothes into his canvas bag quietly, clearly hoping not to wake me. "You're leaving." I set my fountain pen down on the desk, the ink leaving a small black dot on the paper. His hand froze. When he turned around, his face was expressionless. "The unit is rushing me. I have an early train tomorrow morning." "You're not even going to discuss it with me?" I stood up and walked toward him, studying him under the lamplight. 3 years in the military had carved a hardness into him and shaved off the last bit of warmth he once had for me. Or is it because, in your eyes, I don't even deserve to know your schedule anymore? "Do you have to talk like that?" Michael tugged at his collar, impatience bleeding through his voice. "I told you, it's for taking care of Grace. Once I get settled over there." "Once you get settled," I cut him off, my voice quiet but crisp. "Are you planning to divorce me and bring Grace in as your new wife?" His face darkened completely. He grabbed my wrist with so much force it felt like he wanted to crush my bones. "Lisa, don't push your luck. You think you can say things like that? If word gets out, what will happen to my career?" "So your future matters," I said, yanking my arm free. A red mark immediately rose on my skin. "But my reputation doesn't?" "The neighbors already talk," I continued. "They say every time you go back to your hometown, you're always buying things for Grace, fussing over her more than you ever fuss over me. Last time she caught a cold, you rode 20 miles in the middle of the night just to buy fever medicine for her. I once had a fever of 104 degrees, and you told me you were busy on base and wouldn't even make a single phone call." Those words had been pressed inside my chest for too long, and when they finally came out, my throat tightened painfully. Michael's face turned pale, then flushed red. His mouth opened, but after a long moment, he only managed to squeeze out, "That's different. Grace, she's the widow of a fallen soldier. So because of that, you think you can throw your own wife aside and devote yourself to supporting her?" I pressed forward, refusing to let him retreat. "Michael, look me in the eyes and tell me, are you really just sympathizing with her, or is there something else in your heart?" "There's nothing," he suddenly roared, grabbing the enamel mug on the table and smashing it onto the floor. Shards flew across the tiles, one slashing the hem of my pants and leaving a thin cut on my skin. "Lisa, I'm warning you," he growled. "Stop making trouble. Taking Grace with me is justified and honorable. Everyone in command knows about my brother's sacrifice. They'll only praise me for being loyal to family. If you know what's good for you, stay home and don't cause problems." "Honorable?" I let out a bitter laugh as tears spilled down my face. "Using my transfer quota to take another woman to reunite with you, is that what you call honorable? Michael Lin, you make me sick." His face darkened to an ugly shade of iron. He jabbed a finger toward the door and shouted, "Get out! I don't want to look at you." I wiped my tears away and straightened my spine. "This house came from my dowry. If anyone's leaving, it's you." He froze for a second, clearly not expecting the always compliant me to push back. After a few seconds of silence, he grabbed his canvas bag and spat out, "Lisa, Don't regret this. The door slammed again, and this time, I knew he wasn't coming back. The moon outside slipped behind the clouds, and the room was left with nothing but the crackling of the kerosene lamp. I crouched down and picked up the broken pieces of enamel mug one by one. Even when the shards sliced my fingertips, I barely felt the sting. Just before dawn, a soft knock sounded at the courtyard gate. I thought Michael had returned, but when I opened the door, there stood Grace Wang, wearing a faded blue cotton jacket, her eyes red, a cloth bag dangling from her hand. "Sister," she said softly, her voice trembling with tears. "Michael told me you two argued. It's all my fault. If my son hadn't been born weak, none of this would have happened. These are insoles I made for Michael. Could you give them to him for me? I won't go see him. It'll only upset you." Standing there so fragile and helpless, she made me look like the unreasonable villain. I stared at her seemingly innocent eyes, and suddenly remembered catching her a few days ago slipping a handkerchief to Michael, embroidered with a pair of mandarin ducks, even more delicate than the ones I sewed for him. "You don't need to stand outside," I said calmly as I stepped aside. "Michael already left. I'll mail the insoles to him, but there's something I need to make very clear." She stiffened slightly. "Michael is my husband. The transfer quota belongs to me. If you go with him to the base, it won't be proper, and it won't be justified. You'd better think this through." Grace's face drained of color. Her fingers tightened around the cloth bag until her knuckles turned white. "Lisa, I'm only going to get medical treatment, nothing else." "It had better be just that." I took the bag from her, my voice turning cold. "It's getting late. You should head back before my in-laws start worrying." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but in the end she bowed her head and walked away. Watching her leave, I tossed the bag onto the table, my heart completely numb. Michael's cruelty, Grace Wang's act, all of it, finally made me see the true nature of this whole situation. I stopped crying. I stopped blaming anyone. I turned back to my desk and picked up the scattered textbooks, putting them back in order. They were the books Michael's older brother had used before he died, covered in his dense handwritten notes. He sacrificed himself to save others. His spirit shouldn't be something Michael uses for his own benefit. I picked up my fountain pen and wrote the words "college entrance exam" on my notebook. This time, I wasn't doing it for anyone else, only for myself. When my mother-in-law pounded on the door with her cane, I had just finished reciting half of the Yueyang Tower essay. The firewood in the coal stove was burning well, and the sweet smell of steamed sweet potatoes filled the room. It was the only warm meal I had all day. Ever since Michael left with Grace, my mother-in-law had taken out all her resentment on me, saying I couldn't keep my husband, that my heart was blacker than the bottom of the pot. She cut off my food supply and wouldn't even let me use water from the shared well. "Lisa, get out here." Her cane thumped hard against the doorframe. "Michael wrote from the base. He said you're unfilial, said you dared to throw away Grace's things. How did I raise such a useless daughter-in-law?" I shoved my textbook into the wooden chest under my bed and opened the door, my face expressionless. She was gripping a crumpled letter, spits flying as she waved it in my face. "See for yourself. Michael said Grace keeps coughing on base, and it must be because you angered her. If you know what's good for you, go apologize to her right away, and send some brown sugar to Michael for her." I took the letter. Michael's handwriting was messy, the entire page talking about how fragile Grace was and how much care she needed. Not a single word about me. At the end, he added one line, "Lisa has a stubborn temper. Please be patient with her, Mom," as if he was still trying to look like a considerate husband. "There's no need for an apology," I said calmly, "and I don't have any brown sugar." I handed the letter back. "Michael took my transfer quota. He took another woman to live in the housing meant for me. Now he has the nerve to accuse me? If Grace is unwell on base, maybe you should ask Michael whether he's taking good care of her. Don't bother me. You've gone too far." My mother-in-law shook with rage, her cane trembling. "Michael is your husband. Grace is the widow of a martyr. Serving her is your duty." "I can't serve her," I said coldly. I stepped sideways, blocking her attempt to push into my home. This house was part of my dowry. "If you make a scene again, I'll go to the neighborhood committee and let them decide whether I'm unfilial or whether Michael is the one acting shamelessly." She choked on her words, her face turning a dark shade of purple. She stomped her foot and cursed, calling me an ungrateful wretch before storming off. I closed the door and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. My back was soaked with cold sweat. For years, I'd lived in fear of being seen as disrespectful, a shrew, and I endured everything. But endurance never earned understanding. It only encouraged people to push me further. Life truly was hard. With my mother-in-law cutting off all support, I survived on the few ration tickets my family sent me. My meals were nothing more than sweet potatoes and pickled vegetables. At night, I didn't dare feed the stove too much, and my hands would go numb from the cold. Even holding a pen made it shake. The old alleyway was full of people who loved to gossip. They whispered behind my back, saying I got abandoned by my man but still pretended to be strong, that aiming for college was delusional. I ignored all of it and poured every minute into studying. Michael's brother's textbooks were worn from how often I flipped through them. His notes filled every corner of the page, with tiny red stars marking certain lines. His goals from when he dreamed of attending a military academy. Whenever I couldn't push myself anymore, I would touch those red stars and remember what he looked like on the flood rescue front lines. He had been willing to risk his life for his beliefs. So what did my suffering amount to in comparison? To find somewhere quiet to study, I went to the neighborhood committee's little library every morning before dawn. Auntie Jeanne, the retired teacher who worked as the librarian, knew everything that had happened to me. She always saved a seat by the window for me and even lent me her old reading glasses. "It's not easy for a young woman to study these days," she said, bringing me a cup of hot water. "Don't worry about what others say. Once you get into college, your whole life will be different." Her words seeped into my cold heart like a warm current. But the difficulties came quickly. I barely understood anything about high school math, physics, or chemistry. The formulas in the textbooks looked like a foreign language, and I couldn't solve a single exercise problem. I was so anxious my mouth broke out in blisters. Then I remembered Mr. Chen, who lived at the end of the alley. He was an old professor who'd been sent down during the political campaigns. Rumor had it he used to teach high school. I held 2 precious white flour buns I'd been saving and went to knock on his door. When he opened it, he froze for a moment, glanced at the buns in my hands, and sighed. "It's for the college exam, isn't it? Come in." After that, I went to his home every evening for tutoring. He never asked for anything in return. "Seeing you reminds me of my old students," he said. Under his guidance, the formulas that once confused me slowly became clear. I went from being unable to solve a single problem to actually understanding the logic behind them. I copied every key point he explained into a small notebook. I recited them while walking, while cooking. Sometimes even in my dreams, I was solving trigonometry equations. One night, after finishing my lesson and heading home, old Mr. Breda Wong from the alley called me over and handed me an envelope. "Someone in uniform dropped this off this afternoon," he said. "Said it was for you, from Michael." I opened the envelope. There was no letter, only a divorce agreement and a remittance slip for 50 yuan. Michael's signature sprawled across the page in a bold, showy flourish. The date was 3 days ago. I stared at that signature for a few seconds. Then I laughed. He was even more impatient than I had imagined, probably afraid I would delay him and tarnish his noble reputation at the base. I picked up my pen and wrote Lisa in the signature line with steady strokes. No hesitation, no regret. Just relief. Pure, unburdened relief. I didn't touch the 50 yuan. I put the money and the divorce papers into the wooden chest, right next to the transfer order he had stolen from me. The next morning, I tucked my formula-filled notebook under my arm and went back to the library. Sunlight spilled through the window onto my textbook, gilding the characters with a faint golden glow. Mr. Chen walked in and handed me a yellowed workbook for physics and chemistry. "These are my old teaching notes. Take them." When my fingertips touched the warm, worn pages, my eyes burned. "Thank you, Mr. Chen." "Don't thank me," he said, patting my shoulder. "If you must thank someone, thank yourself. As long as you don't give up, there's always hope." I nodded and opened the notebook. reading carefully. Outside, sparrows chirped, and the vendors in the alley shouted their prices, but none of it reached me. My world was only textbooks, formulas, and the dream called the college entrance exam. I knew the road was hard, but if I kept walking, I would eventually see the light. As summer arrived, the weather grew hotter and the library felt like a steamer. I usually stayed until dusk before heading home, partly to enjoy Auntie Jean's electric fan a little longer, and partly to avoid the alley's gossip. Ever since the divorce papers, my mother-in-law had been telling everyone I was ungrateful and heartless, that I'd abandoned Michael myself. I heard it so often my ears grew numb. That day, after my tutoring session, it was already past 7. The setting sun stretched the street into a long golden path. The sycamore leaves along the roadside had been scorched limp by the heat, and the constant shrill of cicadas made my heart feel uneasy. With my heavy textbooks on my back, I walked along the moat toward home. The road was quiet and rarely used, but it saved me nearly 2 miles. When I reached the old locust tree at the corner, 2 young men suddenly jumped out from behind it, both with bleached yellow hair and cigarettes dangling from their mouths. One of them stepped in front of me, blocking my way. He smirked and said, "Hey, little girl, all alone? Where are you heading this late? Let Big Brother walk you." My heart tightened. Instinctively, I stepped back and hugged my backpack to my chest. "No need, my house is just ahead. Please move." "Move?" The other man stepped forward, reaching for my arm. "What's the rush? Stay and chat with us." "Look at you. Backpack and everything. A student, huh? Must know a lot. Good time to teach us a thing or two." His hand was cold and rough. Terror shot through me, and I shook violently as I yanked my arm away. "Don't come near me. If you do, I'll scream." "Go on, scream." The yellow-haired man snorted, glancing around. "This place is deserted. No houses, no shops. Who's gonna hear you?" He grinned. "Be good and come with us. It'll be worth your while. Otherwise..." Before he finished, I turned and ran. But I'd barely taken 2 steps when one of them grabbed my arm hard from behind. My backpack fell to the ground, and my books scattered everywhere. I was scared and desperate, tears stinging my eyes, but I bit my lip hard, refusing to cry. Crying wouldn't help. It would only make them bolder. Just then, steady footsteps sounded behind us, followed by a sharp command, "Halt." The 2 thugs instinctively turned. Not far away, a pair of soldiers in uniform were walking toward us. Leading them was a middle-aged man whose shoulder insignia gleamed brightly in the sunset. He stood tall, his expression firm, his eyes sharp like an eagle's. When his gaze swept across us, the 2 men instantly turned pale. "Comrade officer!" The yellow-haired man stammered and let go of my arm, trying to come up with an excuse. The officer ignored them completely. He strode toward me. "Comrade, are you all right?" His voice was deep but gentle. I shook my head and crouched down to gather my scattered textbooks. My fingers trembled from fear. The soldier behind him immediately stepped forward, barking at the 2 thugs and driving them away. They bolted like frightened rats. "Thank you, sir. Thank you," I said, bowing slightly as I stood up, my voice still shaking. He bent down, picked up my fountain pen from the ground, and handed it to me. His eyes flicked to the corner of my backpack, where the edge of a textbook was sticking out. He paused. "You're preparing for the college entrance exam?" "Yes." I nodded, my cheeks warming with embarrassment. He must have seen the mess I was in earlier. "This road isn't safe at this hour," he said, glancing at the sky, then at the thick textbooks in my hands. "Which direction are you heading? I can have my aide walk you part of the way." "There's no need to trouble you, sir." I waved my hands quickly. "My house is just ahead. Only a few minutes." He didn't insist. He simply took a small notebook from his pocket, wrote down a string of numbers, and handed it to me. "This is the phone number for the security division of the nearby military unit. If you ever run into something like this again, call this number directly, or go to the gate of the base and find the soldier on duty." I accepted the slip of paper, and when my fingers brushed his palm, warm and dry, I felt my heart settle a little. The handwriting on the note was neat and strong. At the bottom was a name, Ethan Zhao. I repeated it silently to myself and tucked the slip carefully between my textbooks. "Thank you, Commander Zhao. I'll remember it." "It's getting dark. Head home quickly," he said with the same gentle tone. "Studying for the exam is tough, but your safety matters too." I thanked him again and hurried forward with my backpack. After a few steps, I glanced back. He was still standing there, watching in my direction, and when he saw me turn around, he nodded once. A quiet warmth rose in my chest, and I quickened my pace until I reached home. Back in my room, I slipped the note with the phone number under the glass on my desk. Staring at the name Ethan Zhao, I couldn't calm myself for a long time. The fear from earlier slowly faded, replaced by a strange, unexpected sense of reassurance. Not every man in uniform was selfish and cold like Michael Lin. There were also people like Commander Zhao, steady, warm, and genuine. That night, I slept better than I had in a long time. No nightmares about Michael's cruelty, no images of Grace's act, no lingering terror from the thugs, only the gentle steadiness in Commander Zhao's eyes and his clear, firm handwriting. The next morning, the very first thing I did after waking up was take out the slip of paper and read it again carefully. Only then did I begin studying. After that day, I changed the route I took home. It was farther, but there were always people around, so it was safer. Sometimes, passing by the entrance of the military base, I would instinctively glance inside, hoping I might catch another glimpse of Commander Zhao. But every time, I only walked past quietly. I knew we weren't from the same world. He was a respected commander, and I was just a divorced woman studying for an exam. Perhaps that encounter was nothing more than a small accident in my life. But that single moment had given me enormous courage. Whenever I grew tired of studying and thought about giving up, I would look at the slip under the glass, hear his voice again. Studying is hard, but stay safe, and suddenly feel strength return to my body. I told myself I had to get into college. I had to live a life worthy of myself. Not just for me, but for the people who had helped me through the darkest days. One afternoon, Auntie Zhang pulled me aside and whispered that she'd heard from the neighborhood committee that Commander Zhao was newly transferred here. He had once earned great merit at the border and was known to be honest and highly respected. Hearing that made my heart stir with a faint, shy sense of happiness and a quiet, inexplicable anticipation. That evening, on my way home, I passed a stationery shop and used the ration tickets I'd saved to buy a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote the name Ethan Zhao, then quickly scribbled it out and replaced it with, "Stay true to your original heart, and you will reach your goal." I knew that, for now, the most important thing was the exam. Everything else was just a luxury, something I shouldn't dare hope for. What I didn't expect was that this seemingly small, accidental encounter would one day completely change the course of my life. The humid summer heat rolled into the room like a wave as I sat there, struggling over a physics problem. The wick of the kerosene lamp had burned too long, and the black smoke stung my eyes. Mosquito bites covered my arms in a line of red welts, and whenever I scratched them, yellow fluid seeped out. To save on electricity and kerosene, I always waited until the sky was completely dark before lighting the lamp. Studying under moonlight tasted more bitter than chewing on hard, dry sweet potatoes. "Lisa, are you home?" A familiar voice called from the courtyard gate. It was my cousin from my mother's side. She married into Lin City, and I'd heard she recently visited the military base to see her husband. She stopped by on her way back. I quickly gathered the textbooks spread across my desk and opened the door to let her in. She carried a bulging cloth bag, and the moment she stepped inside, she sighed. "What kind of life are you living now? You've gotten so thin." She opened the bag. Inside were several white flour buns, a small jar of pork lard, and a slightly worn synthetic fabric shirt. "I went to see your cousin-in-law at the base. Heard a lot of things in the family quarters. I came here specifically to tell you." My heart clenched. I knew exactly what she was about to say. Something about Michael Lin and Grace Wang. "That Michael? He made my blood boil," my cousin said, raising her voice as she sat on the edge of my bed. "I ran into one of his comrades' wives, and she told me Michael has been bragging every day. Says he put you in your place so well you don't dare cause trouble, and he claims bringing Grace with him is an act of kindness and virtue, and the officers all praise him for being loyal and righteous." My grip on my pen tightened. The tip pierced tiny holes into the paper. So it was true. He always framed his selfishness as noble duty and painted my suffering as childish foolishness. And that Grace Wang, my cousin continued after a sip of water, looks all weak and gentle on the surface. But behind everyone's back, she's something else. She keeps telling people how pitiful her life is, that you can't tolerate her, that if Michael hadn't kindly taken her in, she would have died sick back in the village. A few days ago, she caught a cold and cried in the middle of the night in the family quarters, saying she missed her dead husband. She drew half the neighbors to Michael's place, and they all saw him fussing over her at her bedside, like you, his lawful wife, never existed at all. Every word felt like a needle driving into my heart, but unlike before, I didn't cry. I simply asked calmly, and Michael didn't think any of this was inappropriate? Inappropriate? My cousin scoffed. He's thrilled. With the reputation of caring for the widow of a martyr, he's getting close to the leadership. He even said that once Grace gets better, he'll ask someone to help him find a logistics position on base. Some sensible wives think he's eating from one bowl while eyeing another pot, but he doesn't care. I thought of the divorce papers, of how decisively Michael had signed his name. A laugh rose in my throat. Of course, he must have planned all of this long ago. My divorce made him look generous and righteous, clearing the path for him and Grace. Oh right, my cousin suddenly whispered, lowering her voice. I heard there's a newly transferred commander at the base. Last name Zhao. Very upright, hates men with bad conduct. If Michael keeps this up, he might catch the commander's eye. My heart skipped. Commander Zhao? Could it be Ethan Zhao, the man who helped me by the riverbank? I think his name was Ethan Zhao, she said. He had several stars on his shoulder tabs, looked very impressive. My cousin nodded. But that has nothing to do with us. What matters now is that you get into college and cut ties with those rotten people once and for all. I nodded softly. I placed the buns she brought into a bamboo basket and carefully stored away the jar of pork lard. That jar would help me get through many nights of late studying. My cousin looked at the stack of textbooks on my table. She looked at me with distress and said, "It's too hard for you to study alone like this. Why don't you move back to your parents' house? Your mom and dad worry about you." I shook my head. No, cousin. The library is close by, and Mr. Chen is here. It's convenient for tutoring. Besides, if I go back home, who knows what Michael Lin and Grace Wong will say about me? I want to stay here, take the college exam, and show them what I'm capable of. My cousin knew my temperament and didn't push further. She left me 20 yuan and a few kilos worth of ration tickets and reminded me repeatedly to stay safe before she left. After seeing her off, I returned to my desk and looked at the slip of paper under the glass, the one with Ethan Zhao's name on it. Suddenly, I felt steadier, more grounded. Michael Lin thought he could climb higher by relying on fake righteousness and cheap sympathy. Grace Wong thought acting weak and pitiful would let her push me out and take what wasn't hers. But they forgot. These days, what truly mattered was real ability and moral integrity. Their good days wouldn't last long. I picked up my pen again, pushed aside my cousin's words, and focused on the physics problem in front of me. Under the glow of the kerosene lamp, my shadow stretched across the wall, tall and unwavering. The cicadas outside still screeched endlessly, but inside, I felt perfectly calm. I knew I was walking the right path. Hard as it was, it led toward the light. Later that night, I splashed my face with a basin of cool water, waking myself up. Then I opened the physics and chemistry workbook Mr. Chen had given me, turned to a new chapter, and continued reading with full concentration. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, shining across my textbooks, illuminating the road ahead. I believed that as long as I didn't give up, one day, I would stand somewhere far above Michael Lin and Grace Wong. Somewhere they would never reach. When the final day of the college entrance exam ended, my legs felt like jelly as I walked out of the testing room. 3 straight days of intense exams had drained nearly everything I'd built up over the last half year. When I exited the school gates, the sunlight was so bright I couldn't open my eyes. Only when I heard Auntie Zhang calling did I snap out of it. "Lisa, how'd it go?" She rushed over and handed me a bottle of cool boiled water. "I waited for you here forever." I took the bottle and gulped down half of it before catching my breath. "I think it went okay." I answered most of the questions. The days waiting for the admission notice were even more agonizing than studying. During the day, I worked a small job at the neighborhood office, folding matchboxes for a bit of pocket money. At night, I sat at my desk flipping through my brother-in-law's old notes, over and over, my heart twisting with anxiety. My mother-in-law still came by occasionally to complain, but after realizing I wouldn't respond and hearing rumors that I might actually get into college, her tone softened. She even stopped cutting off my food supply. Then, one day near the end of July, the postman's green bicycle appeared once more at the mouth of the alley. This time, he shouted, "University admission letter for Lisa." The matchbox in my hand slipped and clattered to the ground. I ran over and grabbed the envelope with Medical University printed on it. My fingers trembled so much, it took me 3 tries to open it. "Dear Lisa, you have been admitted to our clinical medicine program." The moment those words came into view, I burst into tears and threw my arms around Auntie Jang. All the suffering of the past half year had finally been worth it. News spread through the alley like wildfire. The neighbors who once gossiped and pointed fingers now wore different faces, smiling and saying things like, "Lisa's really something now." Even my mother-in-law came carrying a basket of eggs, her face creased into a flattering smile. "Lisa, dear, Grandma treated you poorly before. Do you need money for college? Grandma has savings." I didn't take the eggs. I simply said, "Thank you, Grandma, but I have enough." I knew very well this sudden kindness. But it was only because I got into college, because I was no longer that pitiful woman abandoned by her husband. At the beginning of September, carrying my simple luggage, I boarded the train to the Military Medical University. As the train pulled away, I watched the old alley shrink farther and farther behind me. I felt no reluctance, only hope for the future. I carefully placed my late brother-in-law's notebook into my backpack. That was my most precious belonging. The campus of the Military Medical University was filled with students in uniform, full of energy and discipline. On registration day, the crowd was enormous. I squeezed through with my luggage, worrying about how to find my dormitory building, when suddenly I heard someone call my name. "Comrade Lisa." I turned around and froze. It was Ethan Zhao. He stood beneath a camphor tree in his crisp military uniform, a few school leaders standing beside him. "Commander Zhao, what are you doing here?" I hurried toward him, stunned. "I'm a part-time instructor here," he said with a smile. "I'm responsible for supervising the freshman military training." His eyes dropped briefly to the admission notice in my hand. "Clinical medicine. Very good. You still remember me?" I felt a little embarrassed. After all, he had seen me at one of my most helpless moments. I thought he would have forgotten by now. "Of course I remember." He took the luggage from my hand and lifted it onto his shoulder naturally. "You studied so hard and never gave up. That's admirable. Your dorm building is over there. I'll walk you." I quickly tried to decline, but he was already striding ahead. Along the way, he asked about my exam, my thoughts about the major I chose. His tone was warm, completely, without the aloofness of a military officer. As we passed the cafeteria, he even stopped to show me which windows had better food and what times were less crowded. The small details filled my chest with warmth. When we reached the dorm, he carried my luggage all the way to the 3rd floor. Fine beads of sweat appeared along his hairline. I took out a towel, wanting to hand it to him, but suddenly felt awkward. My hand was stiff when I finally offered it. He accepted it, wiped his forehead, and handed it back. "Military training is about to start," he said. "The intensity isn't small. If you feel your body can't take it, tell me. Don't push yourself." "Thank you, Instructor Zhao. I can handle it," I said, but my heart thumped like a little rabbit. He gave me a few more reminders before turning to leave. After taking a few steps, he looked back and added, "By the way, on campus, you don't need to call me Commander. Just call me Instructor Zhao." Military training was indeed grueling. Standing at attention, marching in step, every day, I felt like my bones were falling apart. One day, while standing at attention, my low blood sugar suddenly hit me. Everything went black, and I collapsed. When I woke up, I found myself lying in the infirmary bed. Ethan Zhao was sitting beside me, holding a cup of glucose water. "How do you feel?" He helped me sit up and handed me the cup. "I noticed your face looked off, so I brought you here right away." "Thank you, Instructor Zhao." I took a sip. The sweet liquid slid down my throat and warmed my chest instantly. From now on, keep some candy in your pocket." His gaze was full of concern. "You pushed your body too hard studying. You need to recover properly now." From then on, Ethan Zhao seemed to look after me. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. During training breaks, he would hand me his canteen. In the cafeteria, he would help me get a serving of braised pork. During evening room checks, he would ask if there were any classes I didn't understand. His steadiness, his thoughtfulness, his respect, like a warm ray of sunlight, began melting the layers of ice around my heart. I started looking forward to training each day, looking forward to seeing him. Sometimes just catching sight of him from afar gave me an indescribable sense of peace. I knew my feelings for him had shifted, from gratitude to admiration to something dangerously close to affection. But I didn't dare say anything. I was a divorced woman, and he was a respected military instructor. The distance between us felt impossibly large. On the last day of military training, the school hosted a celebration event. Ethan Zhao went on stage to sing "We Soldiers." His voice was powerful, and the audience erupted into applause. Sitting there under the stage lights, watching him shine, I silently promised myself that I would study hard enough to become someone who deserved to stand beside him. The courses at the Military Medical University were even more intense than in high school. Anatomy, pathology, pharmacology, each subject pressed down on me like a mountain. I spent my days shuttling between classrooms, the library, and the lab, often half-running even on my way to meals. Seeing how hard I pushed myself, Ethan Zhao often reminded me to balance work and rest. "Your health is your foundation," he said. And his concern wasn't just empty words. Every afternoon, he would swing by the cafeteria and bring me a bowl of hot chicken soup. He claimed it was from the base cafeteria and that he didn't like the taste. But I knew he had set it aside just for me. I refused a few times, but he said, "You're going to be a doctor. If you can't take care of your own body, how will you take care of patients?" So I had no choice but to accept. Drinking the warm soup, I felt warmth spreading inside me too. One afternoon when I had no classes, I was in the library searching for reference materials when my cousin suddenly called. His tone had a hint of schadenfreude. "Lisa, guess what? Something happened with Michael Lin." My fingers paused on the receiver. "What happened?" "It's that woman, Grace Wang, of course." My cousin's voice crackled clearly through the line. "She's been causing trouble non-stop ever since she followed him to the base. At first, she claimed she wasn't used to the environment, coughing and running fevers every day. Michael took leave several times to take care of her, missing multiple important consultations. The leadership isn't pleased." I stayed silent and listened. "And that's not all," he continued. "She just can't stand seeing others doing well. The wife of Dr. Lee next door got pregnant. Everyone congratulated her. But Grace, she told people behind their backs that Dr. Lai's wife was carrying a girl and that she was delicate and couldn't handle hardship. When those words reached Dr. Lee, he confronted Michael directly, accusing him of failing to keep his woman in check. I thought of Grace's frail, innocent act. I hadn't expected her to be so skilled at stirring up trouble behind the scenes. "That's not even the worst," my cousin lowered his voice. "Lately she's been crying to Michael non-stop, saying she misses her late husband, saying she doesn't feel safe living on base. She's asking Michael to request that her brother-in-law's pension be transferred entirely to her. She even wants Michael to buy her an apartment in the city." "Michael doesn't have that kind of money," I said quietly. "Exactly." When he tried explaining that to her, she started crying, saying Michael had changed, that he was betraying her late husband's memory. I could imagine Michael's predicament perfectly. He'd used Grace to polish his reputation, and now that reputation had trapped him like a cage. "He's a mess now," my cousin sighed. "People on base are talking about him behind his back, saying he invited a wolf into his house, that he ruined his own reputation. Last time he reported to the leadership. He even got reprimanded by his superior, who told him to prioritize his work and handle his personal relationships properly. Now he regrets everything. Regrets it so badly, his guts must be twisted into knots. When he called my cousin, he kept saying he never should have brought Grace Wang to the base in the first place. Hearing the word regret didn't stir the slightest ripple in my heart. When he abandoned me without hesitation and chose Grace, he should have expected a day like this. "Oh right," my cousin added suddenly. "I heard from someone at the base that the commander looking into conduct issues, the one named Zhao? That's Ethan Zhao. If Michael keeps making a mess, he'll probably get reported. Since you're in the same school with him, you better be careful. Don't get dragged into anything." "I understand. Thanks, cousin." I hung up the phone, my heart surprisingly calm. There was nothing improper between me and Ethan Zhao. His concern for me was the guidance of a senior toward a junior, the recognition of a righteous man toward someone who was working hard. There was nothing in it for others to twist. That evening, Ethan Zhao came to the university to give us a military theory lesson. After class, he called me over. "I heard your cousin called you," he said. I froze for a moment, then nodded. "Yes. He told me about Michael and Grace. Don't pay attention to them." Ethan Zhao looked straight at me, his gaze firm. "Focus on your own path. Study well, everything else doesn't matter. The military has its rules. Whoever breaks them will be handled accordingly." "I know." I looked at him, then suddenly gathered the courage to ask, "Instructor Zhao, do you think it's shameful that I divorced Michael Lin?" He blinked, then shook his head, his voice unusually serious. "Divorce is not shameful. Ending an unhappy marriage is a wise decision, not a mistake. You did nothing wrong. The ones who are wrong are those who don't know how to cherish others, those who are selfish." His words washed over me like warm water, dissolving the last bits of inferiority lingering inside me. My eyes burned, and I nearly cried. I quickly lowered my head. "Thank you, Instructor Zhao." "Silly girl," he said with a gentle smile. He reached into his pocket and handed me a fruit candy. "Don't overthink things. You've got anatomy class tomorrow. Go rest early." I took the candy, unwrapped it, and placed it on my tongue. The sweetness spread across my taste buds, warming me from the inside out. Watching Ethan Zhao's back as he walked away, I made a silent promise to myself. I would work even harder, not only to excel academically, but also to be brave enough to pursue my own happiness. A few days later, my cousin brought more news. Grace Wong had gotten into a fight in the military family housing. Apparently, she had stolen a silk scarf someone left out to dry. She got caught red-handed but refused to admit it, crying and thrashing like a child, claiming people were bullying her because she was a martyr's widow. When Michael arrived, his face was pale. In front of everyone, he slapped Grace across the face. It was the first time he had ever laid a hand on her. They said Grace ran home crying, packed her things, and threatened to return to her hometown. Michael tried to stop her, but couldn't. In the end, a superior had to intervene to calm the situation. But Michael Lin's reputation, it was destroyed for good. I heard all this while I was in the lab preparing tissue slides. The blade sliced cleanly through the sample, clear and decisive, like the clean cut I had made from my past, severing everything that once tied me down. Sunlight streamed through the window, falling across the lab bench and illuminating my microscope. I adjusted the focus, and the cells in my field of vision appeared sharp and clear. That was the most genuine form of life, simple and unwavering. I knew the farce between Michael Lin and Grace Wong wasn't over yet, but it no longer had anything to do with me. My life had already sailed into a new direction, one filled with light, hope, and a future that truly belonged to me. 4 years at the Military Medical University passed as if someone had pressed the fast-forward button. I spent every day in classrooms, the library, and the lab. My dissection scalpel grew dull again and again. My notes filled several thick notebooks. The old textbooks my late brother-in-law left me were worn with creases, and the little red stars he drew became my strongest source of strength. On the day of my graduation defense, I stood at the podium and calmly presented the results of my research on optimizing battlefield trauma rescue. Several senior professors sat below, and among them, having come specifically to attend, was Ethan Zhao. When I answered the final question, the room erupted in applause. The lead professor smiled and said, "Lisa, your research carries excellent practical value, clear logic, solid expertise. You're one of the top graduates this year." As I stepped off the stage, Ethan Zhao gave me a firm thumbs up, his eyes full of pride. Warmth spread through me. All my hard work over the past 4 years felt completely worth it. During the graduation ceremony, I was chosen to speak as the representative of outstanding graduates. Standing on the podium, looking at the sea of people below, I thought of myself 4 years ago, studying desperately in that old alley. I thought of Auntie Zhang's care, Mr. Chen's guidance, and Ethan Zhao's support along the way. Tears nearly fell. I had always believed that as long as you don't give up, even an ordinary life can shine extraordinarily. My voice was loud and steady, and the hall once again filled with applause. After graduation, I successfully entered the Military General Hospital as a surgeon. On my first reporting day, wearing my white coat and walking into the department, everyone was warm and welcoming. Dr. Li, the department chief, patted my shoulder. "Lisa, we've heard about you, the star student from the medical university. Welcome to the team." The pressure was heavy at first. Most of our patients were soldiers or military family members. Their conditions were complex, and our surgical workload was intense. One night, a soldier suffered severe abdominal hemorrhaging during training. His condition was critical, and I assisted in the surgery from 8 p.m. to nearly 3 a.m. When the operation finally succeeded, I was so exhausted I sat right down on the operating room floor. I didn't even notice when Ethan Zhao arrived. He handed me a warm cup of milk. "You've worked hard. Drink something hot," he said. I took a sip. Warmth spread from my stomach to my whole body. "Thank you, Commander Zhao." I looked up at him, my eyes full of fatigue, but also pride. "The surgery was successful. I knew you could do it." He sat beside me, his voice gentle. "You've always been exceptional, in school and at work." After that, we saw each other more and more. Sometimes he came to inspect the department, and each time he'd quietly bring me something to eat. When I worked late, he'd drive me back to the dorm. When I hit professional obstacles, he would help me seek out experts or information. My colleagues noticed. They would joke privately, "Dr. Lisa, Commander Zhao treats you differently." I never admitted it out loud. But my heart had already begun to ripple. I knew my feelings for him had long surpassed gratitude, yet I still hesitated. I was a divorced woman, and he was a respected military commander. I was afraid our relationship would attract rumors. The turning point came on a rainy night. I was on the night shift and had just finished performing an emergency appendectomy. The surgery went smoothly. When I got off work at dawn, rain was pouring outside. I hadn't brought an umbrella and was standing at the hospital entrance, unsure what to do. A military vehicle pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down. It was Ethan Zhao. "Get in. I'll take you back." He handed me an umbrella. Inside the car, it was warm. Rain beat against the windows, crackling like static. As we approached my dorm building, Ethan Zhao suddenly said, "Lisa, there's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time." My heart tightened. My pulse jumped instantly. "From the first time I met you by the riverbank," he said, turning toward me with calm seriousness, "I felt you were a strong and courageous woman. Watching you grow these past 4 years, from a student preparing for exams to an excellent doctor, it has made me both proud and happy." He paused, gaze deep and steady. "I know your past, but none of it was your fault. My feelings for you aren't impulsive. They're the result of careful thought. Lisa, will you be my wife?" Tears flooded my eyes before I could stop them, blurring everything. I nodded hard, choking out, "Yes, I'm willing." He reached out and gently held my hand. The warmth of his palm wrapped around mine, giving me a feeling of absolute safety. After our relationship became official, it didn't cause much gossip. Everyone knew I worked hard and had strong professional skills, and everyone also respected Ethan Zhao's integrity and character. Dr. Li, our department director, even joked, "You two are a perfect match, talented man and beautiful woman, both pillars of the military." Our parents supported us as well. My mom and dad made a special trip to the base. When they met Ethan Zhao, they couldn't stop smiling. My father held his hand tightly. "Zhenbang, our Lisa has suffered a lot in the past. We're entrusting her to you." Ethan Zhao nodded solemnly. "Please rest assured, I'll treat her well. I won't let her suffer even a little." Even my former mother-in-law changed completely after hearing I was marrying him. She suddenly brought me a jade bracelet, claiming it was a family heirloom. "Lisa, Grandma was wrong before. Don't blame me. You've found such a good home now. Grandma is happy for you." I accepted the bracelet, not because I forgave the past, but because I finally let go of it. Our wedding was simple, held in the military cafeteria. We invited family, friends, and colleagues. Ethan Zhao wore his crisp military uniform. I wore a white wedding dress. Surrounded by blessings, we exchanged rings and promised a lifetime together. Married life was peaceful and full of warmth. Ethan Zhao was attentive in every detail. No matter how busy he was, he always came home to eat with me. When I worked late, he left a light on so I wouldn't return to darkness. At work, we supported each other's goals. He encouraged me to pursue my specialization, and I reminded him to take care of his health. My colleagues often said they envied me, that I had succeeded in both love and career. I knew none of this came easily. Those difficult years had shaped me. Those who helped me had warmed me. And most of all, Ethan Zhao's love pulled me completely out of the shadows of my past and allowed me to embrace a brand new life. That day, I had just finished a surgery. After taking off my surgical gown, Dr. Li walked over with a smile. "Lisa," he said, "I've got good news for you. The research project you applied for has been approved. You can really spread your wings now." A burst of joy rose in my chest. I quickly thanked him. Leaving the operating room, sunlight streamed through the windows and fell across my white coat, warm and gentle. I lifted my head and looked outside. The sky was a brilliant blue, dotted with clouds, clear and bright, just like my mood. I knew this was only the beginning of the most exciting chapter of my life. After becoming part of the core surgical team at the Military General Hospital, my days were full and steady. I spent my time moving between the wards and the operating room. The sense of saving lives, of making a difference, washed away the last traces of the shadows from my past. Ethan Zhao remained as attentive as ever. On weekends, we would go to the market together. He cooked, I read. Sometimes we strolled through the military family compound, chatting with neighbors. Life was simple, but rich with warmth and belonging. One day, after finishing a complicated gallbladder removal surgery, I returned to my office and took a sip of water. Nurse Xiao Zhou suddenly rushed in, eyes sparkling with gossip. "Dr. Lisa, I just ran into old Zhang from logistics downstairs. He said a military doctor from another unit is visiting today, and he specifically asked to see you." "To see me?" I blinked. I didn't know any military doctors from other units. "I think he said his name was Michael Lin. He said he was your old acquaintance." The name Michael Lin dropped into the calm lake of my heart like a small stone stirring faint ripples. I never expected him to come find me after all these years. "Where is he?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "In the reception room on the first floor. Old Zhang is with him. Should I tell him you're busy?" "No need." I shook my head. "I'll see him. After all, we did know each other once. Let's hear what he wants." I changed into a clean white coat, straightened my collar, and headed downstairs. Before I even reached the reception room, I heard his voice, still carrying remnants of the old arrogance, though worn down by fatigue. When I pushed the door open, Michael Lin was sitting on the sofa. His military uniform was faded and worn, the same rank insignia he'd had years ago. Clearly, he hadn't advanced much. Old Zhang immediately stood up when he saw me. "Dr. Lisa, you're here." Michael turned toward me, his eyes widening, shock flashing across his face. Complicated emotions flickered there. Surprise, disbelief, and something that looked like regret. He clearly hadn't expected me to look like this. My white coat fit neatly against my straightened posture. Confidence and professionalism rested naturally on my face. I was no longer the young woman who once cried in that old alley. "Lisa," he said, standing up. His voice sounded dry. "Dr. Michael," I replied, extending my hand politely. "Long time no see." His hand was cold and rough, the complete opposite of Ethan Zhao's warm, steady grasp. He seemed unsettled by my formality. Pulling his hand back quickly, he blurted, "I didn't expect you to be this accomplished now." I only did what I should have. I gave him a small smile and sat down across from him. "So what did you come to see me about? Are you here to exchange medical experience, or is there something else?" Michael opened his mouth. For a moment, it looked like he didn't know where to begin. Old Zhang, noticing the awkwardness, stepped in to smooth things over. "Dr. Michael is part of the visiting medical exchange group this time. Yesterday, when we were chatting, we mentioned Dr. Lisa. You told him you're the youngest core surgeon in our hospital. He said he knew you before and wanted to come see you." I glanced at Michael Lin. His eyes darted away, clearly showing he didn't come just to see me. I didn't press him. I simply lifted the glass of water on the table and took a sip. After a few minutes of shallow, insignificant medical conversation, Michael suddenly shifted the topic. Lisa, back then, when I brought Grace with me to the base, you didn't cause trouble after, right? His tone carried a faint, almost unnoticeable probing, and an arrogance so subtle yet so familiar. As if in his mind, I should have cried, clung to him, made a scene, because that's the version of me he always assumed I'd be. Before I could respond, old Zhang froze, then stared at Michael in disbelief. Dr. Michael, what do you mean by that? Why would Dr. Lisa ever cause trouble? Michael frowned, clearly annoyed that old Zhang was interfering. She was stubborn back then. When I left without taking her, of course she'd have emotions. You don't know the situation. You clearly don't know the situation, old Zhang cut him off, slapping his thigh with a shocked expression. Dr. Michael, have you not followed anything about Dr. Lisa these past years? She divorced you properly and legally, then relied on herself to get into the military medical university. She fought her way up, step by step, to where she is now. Michael's face drained of color, his lips twitched. Divorced? I signed the papers, but I thought... You thought Dr. Lisa would wait for you? Old Zhang raised an eyebrow, his tone edging on sarcasm. Or cry and cling to you forever. Michael shrank back, stunned. Dr. Michael, old Zhang continued proudly, you really don't know her at all. After the divorce, she focused entirely on studying. She was admitted to the university and won scholarships every year. After graduation, she came to our general hospital. Now she's our star surgeon. Michael's eyes widened more and more, disbelief taking over. He stared at me as if seeing a stranger, one he never truly understood. And that's not all, old Zhang added, admiration filling his tone. Dr. Lisa isn't just any doctor. She's the wife of Commander Zhao, Commander Ethan Zhao. You know him, right? Deputy commander of our military region. Upright, highly decorated. Old Zhang smiled. They're the model couple of our entire military district. Everyone envies them. Zhao, Ethan Zhao, commander. Michael's voice trembled. His face turned ashen like every ounce of strength had left his body. He collapsed back onto the sofa. He must never have imagined that the woman he abandoned so easily, so carelessly, would one day become the wife of a man far above him, someone he could never hope to reach. He must have expected me to crumble, to wait, to cling to him. Instead, I had rebuilt myself, piece by piece, until I stood somewhere he could no longer touch. Watching him sit there, lost and hollow, I felt no pleasure, no revenge, only a quiet realization of how far I had come. All the bitterness of the past had long been carried away by the wind. To me now, Michael Lin was nothing more than a familiar stranger. Dr. Michael, I said, rising to my feet, my voice steady. If you came for medical exchange, I'm happy to share what I can. But if it's for anything else, then I don't think we have anything to talk about. I have patients to check on. I'll be going. I turned and walked out without looking back. Just as I reached the doorway, I heard Michael Lin's hoarse voice behind me. Lisa, I regret everything. My steps slowed for just a second, but I didn't stop. What use was regret now? Life doesn't offer a rewind button. He made his choices back then, and he should bear the consequences. As for me, I had already walked far, far away on my own path. When I returned to my office, Ethan called right at that moment, asking if I wanted to have lunch together. Old Zhang just called me, he said gently. He said Michael went to find you. Yeah, we met, I replied with a small smile. Nothing important, just a bit of catching up. Don't let him affect your mood, Ethan said, his voice warm and steady. I'll take you to eat sweet and sour fish at noon. Your favorite. Okay. I hung up, my heart full of warmth. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, falling across my desk, illuminating the framed photo of Ethan and me. We were both smiling, bright and carefree. Michael's sudden reappearance, his regret, his remorse, none of it had anything to do with me anymore. My happiness was firmly in my own hands now. No one could take it away. When the military region's annual medical commendation ceremony was held, I went on stage as one of the outstanding military physicians. Wearing my crisp white coat, the medal shining on my chest, I stepped into the spotlight and looked at the sea of people below. Ethan sat in the front row, meeting my gaze with pride that warmed me to my core. After stepping down from the stage, I ran into a group of guests. At the front was the visiting delegation's leader, and behind him stood Michael Lin and Grace. It was the second time I'd seen them since that meeting in the reception room. Grace wore an ill-fitting floral blouse, her hair tied neatly, but she couldn't hide the fine wrinkles and exhaustion around her eyes. When she saw me, her gaze darted away, and she instinctively shrank behind Michael. There was none of that fragile, pitiful, tragic beauty she once pretended to be. Michael looked even worse. His uniform was wrinkled, and his eyes were bloodshot. When he noticed the medal on my chest and saw Ethan handing me a cup of water, his lips trembled, but no words came out. "Dr. Lisa, congratulations." The leader beamed as he shook my hand, admiration in his tone. "We've heard about your achievements for a long time. Meeting you today proves it's all true." "You flatter me," I responded politely, my eyes brushing past Michael and Grace without a ripple of emotion. Ethan naturally wrapped an arm around my waist, his voice warm but quietly protective. "My wife has worked hard these years. She deserves every bit of this honor." The reassurance in his gesture made me feel grounded and calm. Michael watched Ethan's hand on my waist, his face turning even paler, his fists clenched so tightly they blanched. Suddenly, Grace stepped forward, her voice trembled. "Lisa, no, Dr. Lisa, about what happened back then, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have followed Michael to the base. I shouldn't have taken your spot." Her words drew curious glances from people nearby. Michael's face instantly flushed bright red. He tugged her arm anxiously. "Grace, stop. I have to say it." She pulled her hand away, tears spilling down her face. "These years, I haven't been happy at all. Michael complains about me every day, says I ruined his career, says I'm not as sensible as you. I'm not as capable as you. I can't even lift my head in the family housing compound. Everyone whispers behind my back saying I stole someone else's place, saying I'm a walking disaster." The more Grace spoke, the more agitated she became, her voice rising. "I thought following Michael would give me a good life, but he never cared about me. All he ever wanted was to use my brother's legacy to climb higher. Now that he has no hope of promotion, he blames everything on me. I've had enough." Michael's face went stiff, turning from green to pale. He looked like he wanted to shout at her, but the delegation leader shot him a warning glance, stopping him in his tracks. People around us were whispering, their looks full of scorn and ridicule. Grace turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Dr. Lisa, I know it's too late to say this now, but I really regret it. If I hadn't followed Michael back then, if I hadn't been so greedy, maybe we all would have lived better lives." I stared at her tear-stained face, feeling absolutely nothing. "Grace," I said calmly, "we all walk the paths we choose, and we all bear the consequences that come with them. I let go of the past a long time ago. Your life has nothing to do with mine." Ethan gently patted my back. He nodded politely to the delegation leader. "We have other matters to attend to. We'll take our leave." He led me away, leaving Michael and Grace under the weight of everyone's judgment. Outside the hall, warm sunlight fell across my shoulders like a soft embrace. "Don't take it to heart," Ethan said, lacing his fingers through mine. "They're only suffering the results of their own choices." "I know." I smiled. "I'm happy now. There's no reason to let irrelevant people affect my mood." After the ceremony, we heard that Michael and Grace left the military district that same day. Later, old Zhang told us that Michael had been sent back to a small township clinic in his hometown because of repeated misconduct and work issues. Grace went back to the countryside with him. They argued constantly, and their days were a mess. As for me and Ethan, our lives stayed steady and joyful. I continued to grow in the surgical field. The research project I led won a national award, and I became a well-known surgical expert, both in the military region and across the country. Ethan was promoted to commander and continued to serve on the front line of national defense. We supported each other and grew together. When we had time, we visited my hometown. The old alley had been renovated. Aunt Zhang and Mr. Chen were both still there. They beamed whenever they saw us. Ethan's mother, still fairly healthy, would always say, "Lisa, you've truly made something of yourself. I'm proud of you, sweetheart." I'd bring her supplements and chat with her for a while. All old resentments had long faded with the passing years. Once, I took some of my medical students to a township clinic for a teaching visit. From afar, I spotted Michael. He wore a slightly yellowed white coat, his hair already streaked with gray. He was taking a patient's blood pressure, his movements rusty and tired. He saw me too. His gaze flickered with a swirl of emotions. But in the end, he simply lowered his head and pretended not to see me. I didn't call out to him. I just kept walking with my students. Watching the patient suffering from illness, I felt my resolve grow even stronger. To heal the wounded, to honor my youth, to keep moving forward. By the time the sun set, our work was done. We got on the returning vehicle. The scenery slid past the window as we drove. I leaned against Ethan's shoulder. My heart felt completely at peace. Looking back, those days when I was abandoned and misunderstood were truly hard to endure. But it was exactly those difficult years that tempered my will, taught me how to be strong, and taught me to rely on my own effort to fight for the life I wanted. I didn't drown myself in resentment. Instead, I seized the chance to take the college entrance exam and step by step walked my way to where I stand today, gaining both a career and love. The ending Michael and Grace met was the result of their own choices. And I, with my own hands, rewrote my fate and became the kind of person I wanted to be. The car moved forward, and the sunset painted the sky a warm orange-red. I knew there was still a long road ahead, but as long as I had Ethan by my side and a career I truly loved, I would have the courage to face any challenge and continue writing the brilliant life that belonged to me. All the shadows of the past had long since turned into the stars lighting my path ahead, guiding me to always grow toward the sun.